that was something. Well, aren't we lucky to have been able to spend our lives in sports? My luck goes way beyond that. The executives that I was able to work with at every single crossroad were absolutely unbelievable. A list that, well, I'll tell you a little bit about it. It started a long time ago. Fran and I were just out of our teens, and we were expecting, I was making $55 a week, which I can assure you would not support a family. And Fran says to me, family is a full-time job, and I'm not getting another one. Well, that automatically made her CFO. but she said, you're going to help me raise this family. And she did an unbelievable job. Bill, Susan, and Andy are here with her. Yeah, and I must have done okay because 65 years later, they're still in my corner. Yeah, and Jack Dolph, he was in my corner professionally throughout his life. He made me production supervisor at WCAUT in Philadelphia when he was program director. And then when he became director of sports and of CBS Sports, he brought me to New York. Well, as executive producer, I got to report to Bill McPhail. He was a tremendous executive, but a better man. And he didn't believe in a dog-eat-dog philosophy. He didn't think you needed that for creativity or success. And he happened to be a very good friend of Pete Rozelle. And speaking of executives, Pete Rozelle certainly is at the top of the sports list in that commissioner category. Well, he was building the NFL through television. Well, what a great time to be an executive producer. Anything you could suggest that might help the telecast, he said, great, go to it. Well, that made that time just terrific for me. And then right around that time, NFL Films came into being, and it was just starting up. And I noticed that Steve is in the Hall of Fame, but his father, Ed Sable, was a very charismatic and forceful executive, and Pete had asked us to work with him, and that was a great opportunity for both of us. Well, I think both NFL Films and CBS Sports profited from that relationship. And then came a very unusual time when CBS had no vice president of sports, which left me as senior at that time. So I launched the NFL Today. And Jack Whitaker was the original host. Jack was mentioned earlier, and I worked with him all the way back in Philadelphia, so I loved Jack. And he turned it over, of course, to Brent, who became a superstar in the studio. And at that time, Chet Simmons, who's also in the Hall of Fame, he was president of NBC, and he wanted to get the NBC studio operation off the ground, so he hired me to help him with that. Well, the original talent there was Jack Buck, another just great broadcaster, and he turned it over to Brian Gumbel. Brian and Brent were very much alike in their ability in the studio. So that was a great opportunity, and both shows, I think, helped change sports production. And they probably led to Chet and Scotty Connell bringing me to ESPN. Well, standing there at ESPN as the only producer, and they want to do 24 hours of sports, that was a little daunting. But I was lucky because all these young, avid applicants for jobs came storming in. They came from Holy Cross, from Ball State, from Hofstra, from Notre Dame, from Arizona State. Well, yeah, from Wake Forest, you sort of name it, and these people who were young guys who were just so good at their knowledge of sports and their energy level and their fearlessness, that made up for any lack of television knowledge. We were able to work on that. And of course, ESPN was on its way. Well, then Steve Bornstein took over, and he gave me one more chance to work with another terrific executive in Lauren Matthews, who was vice president of programming. John Wildhack had moved up too far for me to work with him. But Lauren was a terrific guy, too. He really reminded me a lot of Bill McPhail and just his approach, his human approach to the business and to life, and I just loved working with him. And he backed me up in my work with Jerry McInnes to launch ESPN Outdoors. Oh, that was, yeah, what a terrific thing to be able to, and at the dawn of the outdoors, to move into the twilight of your career. It was absolutely wonderful. So that's I think by my count nine just great executives, and most people are lucky to have one or two. No, actually I'm wrong. There were 10, because Steve Anderson, who had helped us to get going at the very beginning of this whole thing, he had moved on to be sort of in charge of, I think, most everything, and he let me do or produce the adventure races on the X Games. And man, that was absolutely fantastic, because that might have been, it was, for me, the toughest, both physically and mentally assignment that I had in my whole career, and it was just a wonderful way to end up. So I have to thank Steve for that. And had I stayed on just a little bit longer, there would have been, 11 and 12, because Jed Drake and Tina Thornton were standing in the wings. So a great crew, and I certainly couldn't have done anything without all of them. But I want to congratulate all of the other inductees, particularly Mary Carrillo, who throughout her career she managed to bring out the best in sports. She really, yeah. And then when just one other thing, when John Colby joined us back in the early going, the hectic days, and he put us on the map musically, he made one great suggestion to me that I really think is, I think is good for all of us. Yeah, and we could all just think about that. He said, so start off each day with a song. Even if things go wrong, you'll feel better. You'll even look better if you start off each day with a song. You're simply